A very warm welcome to my dear students of class 12 science. Welcome to environmental science class. We are dealing with the chapter human beings and nature. Now today in this particular chapter we will start with the topic earth first. Then we will move to the second topic, which is called Greenpeace. In this Greenpeace we are going to talk about this mission statement and the strategy. Okay, and the final topic of this particular class we'll learn about WWF, that is World Wide Fund for Nature. We'll learn about its goal and strategy. Okay, so these are the three topics that we are going to cover in our today's class. So first of all, let us begin with the earth first. Okay, so this earth first is mainly an environmental advocacy group, a radical environmental advocacy group which will take a direct action against those who are trying to damage the environment. Okay, so they will work against those particular people or group of people who will bring a negative impact to our environment. Okay, so they will take a direct measures against those particular people or the group or the agents who are hampering the environment. So that's why they are called a radical environmental advocacy group. Okay, that was founded by Dave Foreman, Mike Rosella, and Howie Wolke in 1979 in the United States. Okay, so now there are nearly around we can say 15 countries. Okay, more than 15 countries where we will find this Earth First group. Even in India we have got this Earth First. Okay, it was mainly inspired by the book of Rachel Carson called Silent Spring, then the novel of Edward Abbott, The Monkey Gang, and one of the, let's say, the philosophical thought of the book of the Aldo Leopold called The Land Ethic. So from these particular writers, okay, so the Fairmans, Mike Rosella, Howie Wolke, they were inspired to mainly bring these radical environmental advocacy group, okay, mainly to protect the environment. So let's check it out. You can see over here. Okay, so we have got the Dave Foreman, okay, we have got Howie Wolke, who are mainly the founder of the Earth First radical advocacy environmental group. Okay, so just learn that nearly around 15 countries including India we have got this Earth First. Okay, so in the early years the group usually came up with far-reaching wilderness proposals, okay, which the mainstream environmentalists usually used to avoid. Okay, so they often use publicity stunts to drive home the messages. Okay, they started off collection letter called the Fund for Wild Nature also, which was mainly used for research, publicity and education with the people by the Earth First activities. Okay, so they often use publicity stunts to drive home their messages. Clear? And after that they started collecting fund also in the name of, we can say, for wild nature. Okay, and it was mainly for which purposes? It was used for research, for publicity and for the education by the Earth First activists. By mid-1980s, okay, the Earth First activists began to identify themselves with the deep ecology environmentalist. We have learned about deep ecology and the shallow ecology. Okay, so by mid-1980s, the Earth First activity, they began to establish themselves. They began to identify themselves as the deep ecology environmentalist. Okay, so they promoted the idea that all the forms on the earth, all the forms of life on the earth, that means the human life and the non-human life, which we have learned in the deep ecology topic. Okay, so they promoted the idea that all the forms of life on the earth, may it be human life or the non-human life, they have got their own intrinsic value, independent of the value to the human being. Because when we are learning about deep ecology, remember that all the life form on the earth has to be given a due importance and needs to be conserved, because each of them has got its own intrinsic value, and that value does not depend on how useful are they to the human life. Whereas shallow ecology, they like it has got a type of a selfish motive behind the consumption of environment, because they thought that environment is mainly for the use of the human life. Okay, but deep ecology was mainly concerned that both the human life and the non-human life, they have got their intrinsic value, and that value does not depend on how useful it is to the human life. Okay, so by mid-1980s, so these Earth First activists, they also began to identify themselves as the deep ecology environmentalist, and They promoted the idea that all the life forms on the earth, may it be human life or the non-human life, they have got its own intrinsic value depending on how useful they are or not to the human beings. Okay, so all the life form has to be conserved, has to be preserved. Now by 1985, okay, in 1985, the activist took action against a logging company by tree sitting. That means they used to sit at the base of the tree, okay, for support. Like those logging companies, they used to cut the tree, they used to go deforestation. So this earth first activists, they used to sit at the base of the tree, many to support. Okay, so it was a type of fairly successful civil disobedience movement. So they were protecting the tree by sitting at the base of the tree. By 1987, the activists became associated with direct action to prevent any development that was likely to cause damage to the environment. Okay, like logging, like construction of dams, etc. Okay, so some of the methods which were mainly been adopted by the particular earth first activist, okay, it was too radical. That's why most of the members, they usually move away from the group because of the ideology, because they were taking direct actions against those company, okay, like logging, okay, like creating dams, which was directly affecting the environment. So they were taking those type of steps, like let's say which were sort of illegal steps. Okay, so most of the members, they usually move away from this particular earth first group. Okay, now the protests were, however, more often than not, but in form of the roadblocks, okay, tree sitting or other form of civil disorder movements, it usually moved to the other form. Like in the beginning, they were sitting down at the base of the tree, okay, they were blocking the roads, fine. But now the movement was taking different form. They were moving towards the illegal sort of steps that we were taking against those particular groups who were impairing the environment, due to which most of the members usually shifted away from this particular group. But whatever the step they were taking in, okay, whatever the radical step that they were taking in, too direct or not direct, to conserve the forest, but we can say that this group has actively participated in protecting the mother earth from the environmental damage. Okay, now next one we'll learn about the Greenpeace. Okay, so this Greenpeace is a non-governmental organization, and it was founded by Bill Darnell and Dorothy Stowe in 1971 in Vancouver, Canada, and till now it's operating in over 40 countries. Okay, the international coordinating office is located in Amsterdam. As a global organization, Greenpeace focuses on the most critical worldwide environmental issues like oceans and ancient forest protection, alternative sources of energy, okay, because fossil fuels that we're using, soon or later they usually become extinct, okay, it will no longer in use, it will usually become extinct from our planet Earth, and that's why they mainly started moving towards the finding out the alternative sources of energy. Then main motive behind this one was to stop the climate changes, because once we are using the fossil fuels, generally we will deplete those fuels, but at the same time use of those fossil fuels will generally affect the climatic condition of particular place. That's why we have to move towards the alternative sources of energy. Then next focus was on the nuclear disarmament and into the nuclear contamination, okay, elimination of toxic chemicals, and preventing the release of genetically engineered organisms into the nature. This will obviously, if we are trying to continuously produce the genetically modified organisms, may it be plant or animal, whose genes has been altered, okay, that we'll learn little in biology. If you are trying to bring the changes in the gene of an organism, may it be plant or animal, then they are called genetically modified organisms or genetically engineered organisms. And if we are continuously producing these genetically engineered organisms, then that will surely affect the biodiversity of living organisms of both plants and animals. So we have to prevent the release of the genetically engineered organisms. So let's see the photo we can see of Bill Darnell, okay, who is the founder of Greenpeace. You can see over here the Bill Darnell, okay, and we have got the Dorothy Stowe, who mainly founded this non-governmental organization called the Greenpeace. Okay, now let's talk about the mission statement of Greenpeace. Okay, so we are directly say the main focus of Greenpeace. Okay, statement. So Greenpeace is an independent campaigning organization which uses non-violent principles, we can say, creative confrontation to explore the global environmental problems and to forge the solutions which are essential to green and peaceful future. Okay, so find out the problems which is mainly related to the environment, and second one, you have to find out the solution also. Clear? So the main goal of Greenpeace is to ensure the ability of the earth to nurture life in all its diversity. Okay, so to ensure the ability of the earth to nurture life in all its diversity. So therefore, the Greenpeace seeks to protect diversity in all its form. Clear? Prevent pollution and abuse of the earth, oceans, land, air, and fresh water, and all the nuclear threats. Promote peace, global disarmament, and non-violence. These are the few mission statements of the Greenpeace. Now let's move to strategy of Greenpeace. Okay, so Greenpeace relies on individual supporters and the foundation grant that they are getting. It does not accept fund from the government, political parties, or from the corporations. Okay, so it believes in direct actions which are triggered to public notice through various environmental issues. Okay, and infinite decision for both public and private sector. So that's why the strategy is to collect the fund, not from those political parties, from those corporations, or from the government, but it will simply rely on the individual supporters and the foundation grant. Okay, that's why it relies totally on the individual supporter. Okay, and it believes in direct actions which have triggered of legal action against the activist. So second first strategy is that dependent on individual supporter, and they will take the direct actions against the activist. So this is the strategy of Greenpeace. So in Greenpeace, we have to go through the mission statement and the strategy and the focus why this Greenpeace has been established. Clear? The next one, we will talk about the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF. Okay, so let's check it out. So WWF, what is the term called WWF? Okay, it's an organization which is committed to the conservation of the environment. And the founder of the organizations, mainly they were Sir Julian Huxley, okay, Peter Scott, and we have got Guy Montfort, and we have got Max Nicholson. So we have got the photo of Sir Julian Huxley, who used to be one of the founder of the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which mainly an organization that is committed toward the conservation of the environment. Okay, now let's talk about the mission statement. The mission statement of WWF, it mainly comprises of three parts. Now what are those parts? First one is the conservation of biological diversity. Conserve the biological diversity of our earth. Okay. Number two is the sustainable use of renewable resources. You know what the sustainable uses means. We have already learned in our previous classes. The development, okay, where we can use the natural resources, but we have to keep in mind that those resources must be available to the future generation also without hampering the environment. That is called sustainable use. Okay, so second mission statement of WWF is the sustainable use of renewable resources, and the third one is reduction of pollution and the wasteful consumption. So these are the mission statement of WWF. Now let us talk about the goals and strategies of WWF. Okay, so we'll go point to point wise. So it is hoped that by 2020, okay, it is hoped mainly that WWF will conserve many of the world's most ecologically important regions by working in partnership with others. So the main goals of WWF are to protect and restore species and their habitat. So protect the species along with the habitats where they are mainly found. So protect the species and their habitat. Number two is that strengthen local communities' ability to conserve the natural resources. That means the protections, the conservation of the natural resources must be done by the local community. So the public participation or people participation is very, very important for the conservation of natural resources. Okay. Third one is transform market and policies to reduce the impact of the production and consumption of commodities. So we have to make such a policies, okay, where we will reduce the impact on productions and the consumption of those commodity or the products. Next particular goal is to ensure that the value of nature reflected Okay, ensure that the value of nature is reflected in decision made by the individuals, community, government, business, and is not ignored in course of policy making. So we have to ensure that the value of nature will be reflected, and those value of the nature, those value of nature will not be ignored in due course of policy making or policy framework. Next one is mobilize people to support the conservation, because if hundreds of millions of people will come forward for the conservation of ecosystem, conservation of natural resources, then surely we can conserve it. So these are the few strategy or the goals of WWF. Okay, so in an effort to achieve its goals, the WWF has included not only the conservationists who wish to conserve the environment, who wish to conserve the natural resources by providing information and scientific data, but also businessmen for taking practical decisions and executing the well-managed plans. So the WWF works closely with World Conservation Union and has formed the partnership with the United Nations, UN, the World Bank, and the European Union. So today we have learned about Earth First. Okay, the radical environmental advocacy. We will take the direct measures against the activists who will create a negative impact on the environment. Then we move to Greenpeace, the non-governmental organizations. Okay, then we have learned about the WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. So this was today's class. Okay, thank you, and we will be meeting in our next class, okay, with a new chapter. So till then, stay safe, take care of yourself, and happy learning. Thank you.